John Gibson to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Is it a possibility? I'm going to include the clip here where Elliotte Friedman talks about it, but it's been a discussion in the past. Apparently the Leafs have talked about a John Gibson trade in the past, and Elliotte Friedman kind of talks about it, but I'll show the clip that at different points, either side just didn't see a fit or just wasn't interested at the time. I mean, just speculation on my part. At some point when maybe they were trying to move on from Freddie Anderson, or before they realized Jack Campbell could take on a bigger role when they initially acquired him, he was kind of more of a backup target. But then Jack Campbell obviously took the reins. So I think for the Leafs, maybe Jack Campbell could be coming back, but I think John Gibson could be a fit. So I'm going to include the clip in here, and then you guys give me your thoughts, and I'll talk more about it.
When Bob Murray was GM of the Ducks, I think there were times that the Ducks and the Maple Leafs talked about John Gibson. And I don't think it ever got close. I think it was talked about, and I just think for whatever reason it didn't occur. I do think that the Maple Leafs are going to consider a bold move or two this offseason. Probably one. I think whatever they say publicly, they realize they can't run it back the exact same way. I do think if they don't sign Jack Campbell, a goaltender is going to be on their radar, an upgrade, and I do think John Gibson fits that bill. I also think Anaheim sees with its timeline that John Gibson might not make sense for them. And if there is interest, they will seriously look at it. The Maple Leafs offered Campbell 3 years in the $2.75 million range. And I heard that Campbell countered, much higher. Or just said that wasn't going to do it. So I think his market value is higher than where they tried to do it at the beginning of the year. I think they do believe in Campbell as a goalie. I think they really believe that he wasn't the reason they lost this year, which is I agree with 100%. I just think it comes down to, can the two sides here find a number that makes sense? And I think it's been a real challenge.
So I saw this tweet and someone on Twitter, and it got a bunch of likes and attention. So saying John Gibson has not been good for a few years. Leafs cannot afford a $6 million goalie. Even if they could, they're not trading Nylander for said goalie. And even if they were, the $6 million goalie to trade from is Connor Hellebuyck. So that's another goalie that's out there. Would the Jets, if they're trying to retool, would they trade Connor Hellebuyck? Because the Jets just haven't had that success with a goalie that's one of the best, if not at times been the best in the league. Obviously, I would probably put Vasilevsky ahead of him in recent years, especially with the playoff success, but Hellebuyck in this season and then what he did last year. So I think when you look at John Gibson, I think it would have to be, and I saw some people talking about Nick Robertson. And I think if you're talking about Nick Robertson and potentially a draft pick, maybe it's a draft day deal where you include some contracts, you pile up a couple contracts like Kerfoot, like Hall, maybe even Mrazek, and you attach a first-round pick, you attach a couple more picks, attach a couple prospects, including Nick Robertson, and make this a big trade for John Gibson without getting rid of William Nylander. If you included a couple contracts like Kerfoot, like Hall, like Mrazek, at least a couple of those contracts, and I think the Leafs would try to send Mrazek to Anaheim if Gibson was coming back the other way, I think it could work. And I think Mrazek, if he stays healthy, we know Mrazek at times has been okay. So maybe Anaheim just goes, all right, we'll take Mrazek to get more assets here, and you don't trade William Nylander, and you take a shot at John Gibson. You know what? John Gibson has just gone over that 900 save percentage the last couple of years, but he's also been on a mediocre Ducks team. The Ducks have not been good the last couple of years. I think when you talk about John Gibson, I think he's always been good. And if anything, last year, or this past year I should say, the only reason the Ducks were high up in the Pacific Division and good for a little bit there for a couple months was because of John Gibson. If you watch Ducks games, I watched a few, there were some games where the Ducks had no business being in, and John Gibson kept them in it all the way. So I think when you look at John Gibson for a few years there, he was rocking 915, 920, 925 save percentages the last few years, around 905, and that's because the Ducks have been quite mediocre the last 3 years. So I think when you look at John Gibson, if he came to the Leafs with a much more improved defense group, I know people still criticize the Leafs defense, but statistics and just proof in the season, yes, they've choked in the playoffs, we get it. But this year showed a lot more results from the defense. So I think John Gibson could be very successful here. I think if Jack Campbell wants anything over, I would say $4.5 million, I think you take a shot at John Gibson. I think if you can get Jack Campbell at $4 million or $3.5 million somehow on maybe a 4 or 5 year deal, because you would have to extend the term longer to get that lower amount per year, but we'll see. I think Jack Campbell easily wants over 5 based on the year he had. I just think at 30 years old, you can't do that if you're the Leafs. John Gibson, a much more proven goalie, much more consistent goalie, and he's 28. So there would be, I think, a little bit more, I would say, term involved there to stay with the Toronto Maple Leafs if they acquired him. So the Connor Hellebuyck one, I think, is a little far-fetched, but we'll see. I think the Leafs will see the Jack Campbell price point, but for me, it cannot go over that 4.5. I think that's the max I would go for Jack Campbell, max 4.5. I said somewhere between 3.5 and 4.5 is where, if you're the Leafs, you go for Jack Campbell. And I mean, there was rumors, as Elliott Friedman said, that they were offering 2.75 for Jack Campbell. Jack Campbell probably wanted closer to 5. If you meet in the middle somewhere, it's around $4 million for Jack Campbell. That for me would be realistic. So give me your thoughts if you think the Leafs should go after John Gibson, a trade, maybe draft day trade. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like, hit the notification bell, and we'll see what the Leafs do in terms of goaltending.